Water Ride by MisterHappenStance. I awoke to find myself sitting in a cramped little boat, which bumped into the one before me as mine was bumped by the one behind me. Bumper to bumper traffic, but not on any road I've ever been on. Not that I remembered anyway. We all floated on what at first I thought was a river, but which I now realize was much smaller in scope and artificial. We were clearly inside, as in there were walls and I think a ceiling, though it was hard to tell. There were no windows that I could see, and no obvious light source, yet my surroundings were visible for the most part. The river I was on was more of an artificial stream, which curled and winded along its concrete path. Where it led, I couldn't immediately guess, but I had a very bad feeling about it. More than that, I somehow knew that it led somewhere I desperately didn't want to go. And yet, my vessel moved forward, one bump at a time. There was either faint wind or laughter in the air as I slowly bumped forward. We were so clustered together that it seemed as if we barely moved, though we did discreetly, one boat's space at a time. I realized that there were other passengers in front of and behind me. It was hard for me to see faces, but there was no one I recognized, not immediately anyway. So many boats after me, and many before me, although I could tell that we were all moving forward, or at least towards a set destination. That is to say, we were not going in a circuit, but were all taking a predetermined path towards some end. "What happened?" I heard someone say directly in front of me. I looked at him. He was an older gentleman, I would say in his mid to late 60s. He seemed confused and scratched his balding scalp. He didn't turn around, and I could only see the back of him for the most part. I was just at home. I was tired, more tired than usual. I called it an early night. I woke up here. He shook his head impatiently. "What is this place? Where the hell am I?" he asked, more baffled than angry. He seemed to direct the question mostly to himself. No one else seemed to hear him as far as I could tell. In fact, I realized that though there was someone in the tiny boat behind me, I had a strong desire not to turn around and meet whoever was there. I couldn't explain it, but the urge to stay in place and face forward overwhelmed me. I tried to talk as best I could to the man in front of me. "I think we're in some kind of cave. I can't really tell. It reminds me of a water ride, the kind that's like a roller coaster where you splash down and get soaked by the end, but I don't really know." The old man in front of me didn't respond. I don't know if he could hear me, or he couldn't, or wouldn't answer. And still, my vessel moved forward, one bump at a time. I suddenly had the idea to look at the water and bent my head down into the side. It was calm and seemed both clear and dark somehow. It seemed to be bottomless, but it was water, I think. I could see that it did indeed seem to be part of a concrete path, akin to a ride at a water park, as if we were actually in a massive artificial river. The concrete itself seemed to be composed of some familiar stone, but with an unfamiliar pattern I didn't recognize. It strongly resembled a dark gray mosaic design. For some reason, I was tempted to reach down to touch the water, but something held me back. Some primal instinct warning me to stay inside the boat. I lost track of time as I bumped along. The old man had grown completely silent and no longer moved, not even to scratch his head. He looked along as I did. Occasionally, I thought I had heard a voice, a woman's voice, right behind me, but it was far too faint to tell. It was strange. I could see that there were so many boats behind me, even though I didn't see them with my eyes, and couldn't see the people in them, although I knew that they all had passengers. I could only see the boats in front of me, and if I strained my eyes hard enough, I could just barely make out the outlines of other people, aside from the old man. I could also see that there were now far fewer boats in front of me. In fact, I think there were only 4 in front of me now. Only 4. The others that had been in front seemed to have disappeared without a sound or any trace that they had ever existed. As we approached, the fog seemed to lessen. I found that I could move my head freely, so I looked around a little more, seeing thousands upon thousands of boats behind me, the river behind us flowing, curving, twisting back endlessly. Suddenly, the old man in front of me gasped, and he and his boat were gone. My vessel bumped forward yet again, but for the final time. I instinctively knew now that it was my turn. Total darkness faced me and now enveloped me and my little boat. I didn't know if I had fallen in or if it had come to take me. All I knew was that I did seem to be falling into pitch blackness. The boat disappeared first. My flesh and skeleton and the rest of my body followed, as if they were clothes which had grown too large for me and fell off all around me. I didn't feel it, but I knew that it had happened. Only I fell now. Call it a soul or spirit or mind or essence. But only that which I truly am was left, and fell into this great abyss. But I could feel even what little remained of me disappearing. And somehow I saw, eyeless, and that this wasn't complete and utter emptiness after all. In this darkness, it smiled at me. Its jaws opened as I fell into its maw, and became nothing.